Direct to Science, a podcast by NAWA, the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange.
Welcome to a podcast by the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange, NAWA, recorded at the conference in Brussels entitled Transnational Science Cooperation, Fostering Collaborative Research in Europe and Poland. In this episode, we delve into the critical discussions shaping the future of European and Polish science. We hear Professor Andrzej Szeptycki, Deputy Minister of Science and Higher Education in Poland, but also representatives from the Polish Academy of Science and NAWA as they explore Poland's role in internationalization of science. Our guests shed light on the progress of the European degree label, a pivotal initiative aimed at simplifying and standardizing joint study programs across the EU. We also examine the evolving landscape of the European research area and its new priorities for the years 2025-27, focusing on how these developments impact researchers and institutions. We also gain insights into Poland's strategy for the internationalization of its science and higher education, highlighting efforts to attract global talent and enhance research excellence.
Professor Andrzej Szeptycki, Deputy Minister of Science and Higher Education in Poland.
Sir, could you introduce very briefly the European Degree Initiative and tell us where Poland is with respect to the initiative? Are we going to join it anytime soon?
There have been different study programs proposed by more than one university. Probably the most popular case is so-called double diploma program. So you have two universities which decide to have an MA program, and you have a student who spends the first year in one university, then spends the second year in the other university, then he prepares an MA thesis under the supervision of two professors from both universities, and at the end he gets two diplomas from the two institutions which launched the program. Such programs have an added value because the student gets the knowledge, the competences he would not get just by studying only in the first or in the second university. But once again, such an initiative needs an agreement adopted by the two universities. The concept of the European degree label, which has been adopted by the EU Council in May, and potentially its successor, the European degree, wants to create a framework for such initiatives. Why this is interesting and important? First, because this promotes such form of cooperation. This is an element of integration of European education systems in the field of higher education. This is also an innovative form of teaching. This is especially important in the context of the quickly changing labor market. We don't need currently any more people who just studied whatever, law or mathematics, and they will be working for 50 years as lawyers or mathematicians. This model is progressively disappearing. We will be needing more and more people who would have very specific individual, let's say, skills and curriculum, and such common European programs may be one of the answers to this need. This is also a very interesting offer for especially foreign students. Because if you come from, let's say, South Asia, and you come to Europe, you may not be very tempted by getting a Polish MA degree. But if it says it's a Polish, Czech, Lithuanian degree with an EU stamp on that, with 12 stars, this looks much better. And this brings me to the last part of your question. This is potentially interesting also for Poland. We've been in favor of this initiative since its beginning. However, we've also assessed the European Commission proposal from 2024 as being quite vague, so we wanted it to be more precise. Second, as the presidency, we were also very conscious about the fact that this proposal was received in a very different way by the member states. Some of them, especially countries from Southern Europe, also France, have been very favorable to the proposal of the EU Commission. Some other countries, for example, Hungary or Estonia, were more skeptical. So that's why we had to find a compromise. And basically, that's what we've been doing for these last half a year. The resolution on the European degree label establishes a step-by-step program of getting towards that idea. So first there is the European degree label, so you just put a stamp on the existing national diplomas. Then this program will be cross-checked, verified, tested, and so on. And only around 2029, member states will potentially take another decision on the introduction of the European degree.
How Polish presidency was used by Polish government to forward, to increase international cooperation in the area of science? As Poland is in favor of deepening cooperation, Polish universities are definitely in favor of more cooperation.
First, you have to keep in mind that the official task of each presidency is to find a compromise between the member states. And the official task of a presidency is not to try to realize its national interests. But of course, we've been working on some of our ideas. On the level of the Council itself, the most important success has been the adoption of the Warsaw Declaration. And the Warsaw Declaration focuses on the EU financing for science. So basically we had the 27 member states making the kind of appeal to the Commission, saying framework programs were a good idea of financing European science. Please don't touch it. Because the idea of the Commission was to replace the framework program dedicated for science by something bigger, dedicated for innovation, including science. When you look at the list of the documents adopted by the Council, we had also some more technical documents. But if we are speaking about internationalization, another achievement, which was kind of our idea, not something we had in our agenda, we've received as a presidency. In mid-June, Wrocław hosted a big international conference on European university. That's another instrument of bringing together members of the European academia. You have so-called European universities alliances, so you have groups of 4, 5, 6 universities which create long-term permanent alliances. So they propose together education programs, they launch together research projects, they share data, infrastructure. It's a much better solution than just, once again, ad hoc cooperation initiatives. In Europe, there are more than 60 currently European universities alliances. Polish universities are member of.
Hello, my name is Tomasz Poprawka and I have a pleasure to lead the Polska office, which is a liaison office of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Brussels.
How is Poland preparing to engage with the European research area priorities? How do you see it?
I would say that Poland is engaged already. What we can do is we can do better, we can do more, we can do it a bit more efficiently. So I think currently at level, the engagement is mostly at the level of the ministry and the national agencies like NCBR and NAWA, the NCP, which is based at the NCBR. So these are the colleagues who are mostly involved, sort of a dialogue within the European Union, with the member states, with the Commission, with other institutions, mostly within an ERA forum, which is a forum to discuss the ERA priorities, to identify, and I'm very glad that during the Polish presidency, in this past half a year, we were able to actually reach a political agreement on the new priorities of ERA for next second wave, so to say, for the years 2025-2027. That means that, after the first few years of actually working with a renew ERA, which has happened in 2020, I think now we're actually preparing to do it a bit better, a bit differently. And I think this is the moment where we could expect also from the colleagues at the ministry and the sort of a decision-making bodies within Poland to engage more of the stakeholder in that dialogue. So I think this is something that I would really like to see, so that the ERA really comes down to the community, to the researchers, to the universities, research institutes, associations, and so forth and so forth. That would be a great thing to do, so that we as a community, as large, would be far more better in really having this a European discussion and being part of that ERA, which is not something which is, elsewhere and someone else is deciding. We can be part of that. We are through our ministry, but I do believe that we could do better.
But this is doing better at the top level. And what it means for institutions, for universities, in reality, what's the impact, or what impact would you like to see?
Well, tend to not to agree that the ERA is something which is happening at the very top. It starts at the top. This is where the priorities are sort of designed and identified. But actually, ERA is implemented through the universities, through the research institutions, through the communities, which is something that I would sort of maybe dare to say that in Poland did not really reach that point. I think one of the examples from the last couple of years where we could clearly see that ERA is taking place and is actually occupying us in terms of a discussion that is happening in Poland as well, was the research assessment and COARA, which is a coalition for the reform of a research assessment. This is something that has landed in Poland, and the community clearly picked it up, because we do see that we need to have that dialogue within our Polish system, thinking of how do we assess the grant proposals, how do we assess the institutions. If you think of those, ministerial lists and all of the dialogues and, also a bit of tensions that were there. This is an example where ERA comes down to the country and really engages people involved. And I can see a number of topics within the current priorities and current structural policies within the ERA that could do the same. So clearly, if you think of what we are discussing here in Brussels nowadays during that conference, one of those is the researcher careers. This is again something that in Poland a lot of young researchers, but also senior researchers who actually take care about the future of the Polish research community are engaged in this discussion, which is, I would say, slightly too focused on a very national aspect of that. I would love to see this system where we could actually engage with other member states, with other institutions across Europe to learn from each other, so that we don't really reinvent the wheel every now and then, but we can actually learn from colleagues who either have experienced similar problems. We don't have to follow their path and the solutions that they took, but just the fact of a mere realization that the problem is systematic, that this has to be addressed, and that cannot be just addressed at the level of a, let's say, individual researcher, that institutions will play a huge role, that the level of the ministry we would expect to see a sort of a framework conditions to enable us as a community to react and to follow. That would be something that would be great. So the research careers. But then we also have ideas like something that I will be talking this afternoon, which is the recognition and professionalization of the research managers. These are professionals that are not yet fully recognized. But if you think of international collaboration, if you think of being really successful in a framework program, you need to back up researchers, the talents that are working in the academia, with people who can support them. I mean, we cannot really rely on the engine of the single researcher who will do a research, reporting, financial reporting, a policy outreach, science for policy advice, and a business development. This is impossible. I mean, these people are doing great, they're doing well, but we cannot really expect that they will do everything. The researchers, these individual talents should do what they do best, which is to ask the brave questions, answer them, train the new generation of researchers, and provide us with the solutions. But they need to have a backup, and they need to be surrounded by a number of professionals. Without that, I'm afraid that this will not really fly. And there are other, a number of examples that show cases like this. What I could add is just to have a call to our members of the community, of researchers community, to try to look slightly beyond what is the closest environment and try to engage in a bit of a discussion with our peers and with the different associations that they may be part of, professional associations and professional networks. So to look at the Polish research innovation system slightly from a sort of different vantage point than it usually is, which is my position at the university or at the department in the research institutes. That I think will enrich our discussion, and which is needed at the national level to give a bit of a spice with experiences from the outside would be great.
My name is Magdalena Kołodziejska. I'm a Vice Director of National Center for Research and Development.
Can you please explain how internationalization of science looks like from the perspective of your center?
I think it's a crucial topic. The National Center for Research and Development plays a key role in fostering European collaboration of Polish organizations through the activities of its National Contact Point Department. The NCP department serves a bridge between Polish researchers and European Union Research and Innovation Framework Program Horizon Europe. It provides, for example, expert guidance, training, and support for institutions and individuals seeking to participate in international projects. And by organizing workshops, info days, and networking events, the NCP experts help build partnerships across borders. They also assist in identifying funding opportunities and navigating complex application procedures.
Where do you see challenges for internationalization of science?
In today's world, science is collective endeavor that must transit national borders. The complexity of global challenges, such as climate change, health crisis, and technological transformation, demands an exchange of ideas and integration of diverse research potentials. International cooperation enables scientists to pool resources, share knowledge, and accelerate innovation. This collaborative approach is essential for gaining competitive advantages in an era defined by rapid change and uncertainty. Moreover, Europe's weakening position relative to US and China reinforces the need for joint large-scale initiatives. And in Europe, the most significant instrument for funding research and innovation is Horizon Europe. It supports cross-border projects that bring together academia, industry, and public institutions from different countries. And by fostering such cooperation, Horizon Europe not only enhances scientific excellence, but also strengthens Europe's strategic autonomy and global influence. The program reflects the understanding that no single country can tackle today's challenges alone. Therefore, building strong international research networks is not just beneficial, it is simply indispensable.
How do you place Poland here? What are the advantages and disadvantages, the gaps that, your institution may help to close?
First of all, I see the main gap in IP rights. This is the most important thing which we have to cover because I have seen that Polish scientists are simply afraid to share their knowledge, especially abroad. We have to focus on how to address this problem of IP rights, both on our countryside and as well if we think about Europe.
Is it something unique for Polish scientists, or is it a broader problem in Europe?
I think it's a broader problem in Europe, but in Poland, I have seen that this is more complex than in other countries. If you look at the statistic, for example, at the other European countries, they've got more patents than we've got as a single country, Poland.
And this is because of those intellectual property rights and difficulties with protecting them.
Yes, true. This is the problem, that we don't have the path how to do it correctly, when to start, and what kind of path to choose.
I'm Wojciech Karczewski, and I'm Director General of Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange.
Speaking of internationalization of science, of course, there has to be a plan. There should be a strategy. Could you explain what's the Polish idea for internationalization of science?
At the moment, we're working on the national strategy for the internationalization of Polish science and higher education. The whole process is led by the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange, together with the most prominent scientific and higher education communities in Poland. And we're planning to present the strategy to the Polish government by the end of this year. And it's important to remember that the main goal of internationalization is really about strengthening science and higher education, because these are one of key drivers of economic growth. And as we all know, a strong economy translates into better quality of life and happier citizens. There are many ways we can achieve internationalization in this field. We're still working on the details, but to answer your question as precisely as I can, we're focusing on a few key areas. First, we want to make sure that internationalization fits in well with our economic and foreign policy goals. So it's about creating stronger connections between science, the economy, and diplomacy, so that everything moves in the same direction. Second, we see the need to better link education and research, and to ensure that funding from national, regional, and European Union sources all works together rather than in separate silos. Another big priority is attracting and keeping international talent. We want Polish universities to be places where top students and researchers from around the world want to come and develop professionally. But at the same time, we need to create good conditions so that talented Polish people don't feel they have to leave the country to succeed. We also want Poland to be more visible as a country that contributes to global scientific trends, so that our researchers and institutions are not just following others, but actively helping to shape international research agendas. An important part of this strategy is to help students and academic staff develop intercultural skills and the kind of mindset you need to work in a globalized world. We're looking at how to create globally oriented campuses right here in Poland. For example, by bringing foreign institutions to operate in Poland, or by creating opportunities for international experiences without people necessarily having to travel abroad. That also includes virtual exchanges and, of course, online cooperation. And finally, there is the language question. We believe English should be used more widely as a tool for high-quality education. In NAWA, we think bilingualism is the way forward. We don't want to lose Polish as a language of science and education, but we do want to make sure that international students and researchers feel welcome and have access to what our institutions offer. So this is about the strategy for internationalization for Polish science and higher education we're working on. Of course, It's still a work in progress, and there's plenty of discussion and consultation happening, but we're confident that by the end of this year, we'll have clear recommendations that will help Poland play an even stronger role in global science and higher education.
You have been listening to Direct to Science, a podcast by NAWA, the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange. It was a free-range production.